Hello. The 10th Planet was recorded at the BBC's Riverside studios in September and early October 1966. Anneke Wills and I were relatively new TARDIS travellers, and of course we knew that the 10th Planet was to be William Hartnell's last story as the Doctor. We were intrigued to know how Patrick Troughton would play him. For many years, the bulk of episode 4, in fact all of it except the regeneration sequence, was missing. Recently it has been returned. I'm delighted to invite you to settle back for the 10th Planet.
Anybody who follows me on social media knows that the 10th Planet is my favorite Doctor Who story. I love it. I just absolutely love it. And I think one of the reasons why I love it so much is that there is so much of my interest of Doctor Who that has sprung from that story. And it has always been something that was very important to me. And I just remember, since I was a kid, before I even saw the story, I was so fascinated by the look of them and the idea of what the 10th Planet as a story was. And I'm not even talking about the regeneration. I'm just talking about this wonderful 1960s base under siege story. And I'm going to get into a little bit more why that is so important to me. I love it. And I just really want to talk about it today. It's something that has been with me, almost my whole life now. And it holds a very special place in my heart. I get actually very upset when I hear people like Peter Davison rubbish the Cybermen, from the 10th Planet. He calls, it looks like it's put together from the kitchen drawer. And in a sense, you might think that because of, if you look too closely, you might see some of the stuff that they did to make these costumes come alive. But I think that's just a really bad hot take. And I think that actually that the innovation that Sandra Reed put into the design of those Cybermen costumes, the original, is truly astounding. And I want to celebrate that today as well. And then, of course, a big part of this, a shared experience all of us have, almost more than any other missing episode, is episode 4. And we've been on such a journey, all of us, with this episode, ups and downs with it, thinking that it might have been recovered, and actually ending up with a massive hoax that came about 30 years ago, over 30 years ago now, that we just, it's just, the story just keeps being amazing to me. And, so like I said, as a community, we have a background with episode 4. We opened up this video with a short intro by the late Michael Craze. And even the BBC, when they thought that they had found this episode, they rushed him in to do a couple different introductions. I'm going to talk about where that intro came from that we just saw, and what it actually meant for future releases back in the early 90s, and then how did it turn up in a release in 2000. So there's a lot to talk about today. Now, once again, like I said, because there's so much to talk about, I do my best to get the information as correct as possible. I go through a lot of DWMs. I go through a lot of DWBs. And with the 10th Planet in particular, there is a lot of information that goes beyond whether the story was is going to be put out in video, the fact that it's been nearly put out in video 3 different times, whether the fact that we get information about how the videotapes were wiped or anything else, a lot of information. So if I get any of it wrong, or you have feedback, or you want to say that you like it, or you think that there's some constructive feedback that you want to give, please make sure to reach out to me. You can do YouTube comments, you can do the email address below, the usual things. Because as I say every single time, I adore reading the responses, and I adore reading how you came across these stories, how you came across these videos. I always say it's that shared story, and I really mean it. And it's, that's the reason why I actually put these out more than anything, because I want to hear what you all have to say about it as well. And then, of course, we do a Patreon as well, and I would just ask people to consider joining it. It's as low as $3 a month. We do exclusive videos there. We also do early releases for those who are interested in these videos in particular. These get released on the Patreon before it goes anywhere else, often unedited. Everything I put together is put on the Patreon, and once I upload to YouTube, and if they don't like some of the content I put in there, I'll have to edit it. But what's over on Patreon is unedited. Plus, we do all sorts of, not just Doctor Who, but other Radio Times listings and articles and other short videos exclusive to the page, and a lot of great stuff planned. So please consider. It starts as low as $3 a month. It really helps me when it comes to getting some new equipment, or I like to buy off-air VHS tapes from other public television stations so I could digitize them, because I love to see, and based on your comments, I know you love to see it as well, how other stations broadcast Doctor Who around the United States, which is good because it's something that seems to be ignored a lot of times with the British releases of Doctor Who. They look at everybody else, how they broadcast Doctor Who. The majority of the time, they forget about the U.S. That changed a little bit with the season 20 collection set, and I'm very grateful for it. But there's a whole universe of PBS recordings that I want to share, and they, sometimes it costs money to get those old tapes. So please consider. So, where do we begin with the 10th planet, right? I mean, first of all, what can we say here? The 10th planet is a 4-part story. You could say this along with me. We know all of this. It's a 4-part story. Only 3 episodes exist. They exist on 16mm film. We're going to get into what happened to the videotapes the best we can. And episode 4 has been missing, and it's been the center of hoaxing and rumors for 40 some years. And it's obviously, let's get out of the way, and we're not even going to talk about this a whole lot. It's the first story to feature the Doctor regenerating, and that in itself is why we're here today. Because back for Celestial Toymaker, when the production team had enough of William Hartnell, then they were going to replace him as Hartnell disappears, and when the Doctor comes back, it's a different appearance, and this is brought on by the Toymaker. And I think if that is how Doctor Who changed from Hartnell to whoever would have been next at that point, I'm not so sure we would have been here right now. But to create this character that we really didn't know much about from the offset, from the very first episode, and to then have it kind of like, by the way, this is what happens to this race of beings that the Doctor is from, not named yet, that he can completely change his appearance. And that gives a whole new lease of life to the series. It truly opens up mountains of possibilities. So I think that right there is the saving grace for Doctor Who. And like I said, if that never happened, I don't think we would be here right now talking about any of this. So that is fantastic. The Cybermen themselves, which is really interesting. Obviously, it's the first Cyberman story. And each of the Cybermen, at least 3 of them, had their own names. We had Krang. Krang was a Cyberman who serves as the main spokesperson and commander. We have Jarl, another Cyberman mentioned by name, but with less prominent role. And then, of course, we had Krail. And Krail appears alongside Krang, often issuing orders as well. And, even watching it, you don't really get that. I mean, you get their names a couple times, but it's not a real big part of it. And I'm glad that they dropped it, but it's so unique, and that's what makes this story so wonderful. And it just really, everything about this Cyberman story does set it apart from every other Cyberman story to follow. In fact, you could almost argue it's not even the same race, because they're so vastly different, and they've changed so much and actually evolved a lot more than what they were in the 10th Planet, where in the 10th Planet they were a race, actually a dying race, who needed help, and their planet was destroyed. Here, when we get to stuff like the moon base, they have not only completely changed their appearance, for a while you forget that they were actually humanoid beings inside. That's where it started. And that they seem very robotic, and that they travel around the solar system, around the galaxy. And as we get into later Cyberman stories, even stuff like Revenge of the Cybermen, there's whole wars and stuff fought with them. It's such a different sort of beast to what the 10th Planet is, and I think that might be one of the reasons why I love it so much. Something I didn't realize when I was a kid, and if you ever got the Doctor Who Program Guide Volume 1 by Jean-Marc Lefessier, it tells you the seasons. It tells you what season, the stories take place in. And what I didn't understand as a kid, and this is what happens when you research, and for us, researching is waiting to see what books come out documenting the production of Doctor Who. It's that whole thing about stories being held over, and that we're actually looking at production blocks opposed to seasons. So, for example, something like Planet of Giants is part of, the first production block, as well as Dalek Invasion of Earth, and held over until the start of season 2. Which makes sense for contract-wise, for someone like Carol Ann Ford, who was only in it for a year, but it gives the impression that she held over into the second season for a little bit. Same with, the 10th Planet. So season 4 of Doctor Who begins with the Smugglers. But the Smugglers is a holdover from the 3rd production block. The 4th production block begins with the 10th Planet. And you could tell, if you're not paying attention, you're not going to really notice. Also, it's harder to notice when one of the stories doesn't exist at all. But a couple things here. Really, in some way, you could argue that the Hartnell era really ended with the Smugglers. That's the real last very prominent William Hartnell story, where William Hartnell is truly the Doctor through and through the whole story. You also get something as simple as production changed the typeface for the stories. Up until this point, I'll give you the font name. I don't know what the Letraset name is. I don't know if it's the same or not, but Bureau Grotesque. Version of Bureau Grotesque was used from the beginning of the series, which was a very prominent font face to use throughout a lot of 1960s series. And it goes up until the Smugglers, the Smugglers. And then the fourth production block begins with the Euro-style look. And what I love about that is if you look at one of the final telesnaps to the smugglers, it really is a glimpse of kind of two eras combining in a sense, because it's one of my favorite telesnaps actually is the Doctor, Ben, and Polly looking at the scanner screen, and the camera's looking at them as they're looking at the scanner screen, seeing that it's nothing but snow outside, and it says next week, the 10th planet. And it's such a wonderful moment for me. And I like to create my own narrative with that as well by saying that, Hartnell's looking at the screen, the Doctor's looking at the screen knowing that the end is near because he has such a strange look on his face. I think he's just looking. I was like, my God, snow, whatever. But I just think that's great. And what's interesting about this is, once again, it's a matter of contracts. Hartnell's contract had ended. So bringing him into the 10th planet, if I understand this correctly, and I know if I'm not, many of you will tell me that I don't understand this correctly, that it's kind of like Day of the Doctor for Matt Smith. At the end of Series 7 for the new series, Matt Smith's contract was up. So by the time that Stephen Moffat went on to Day of the Doctor, he didn't have a doctor. And he had to have special contracts made up for Day of the Doctor as well as Time of the Doctor. So, and Matt Smith is the Doctor in all of them, but it's not a regular contract. They were both separate contracts for the stories. And this is the same sort of thing with the 10th Planet, that William Hartnell is, not under contract for a full season or anything. He is, in fact, kind of a guest star in his own series so that he can do one last story, which is really interesting when you think about it, because it's possible that he could have been like, I don't want to do it. And so I'm glad he did do it, because I always think regeneration continuity is a fantastic thing, and we don't really get that into war games. And I know that in the color war games it's there, but for the broadcast version it's not. And I always really appreciate that regeneration continuity, because that really helps bind these series together, all these series, from, the Hartnell to Shooty, and I know that there's, some differences along the way, but I appreciate the attempts to get it right. Now, according to Wiped, which I love to go to, and Wiped has to say that on the 17th of June, 1968, the 2-inch videotape master of the 10th Planet, Episode 4, had a retention authorization issued for it, reasons given for Enterprise's possible future sales, although a 16mm print had already been made. Though the 31st of January in 1969 saw the junking order come through to that episode, but not the other 3. But even that is confusing, okay? Nothing is straightforward. By August of 1969, the majority of Hartnell episodes' original 2-inch videotape masters have been wiped, but a number of Hartnell episodes have no known documentation at all for the wiping of their transition tapes, including the 10th Planet, episodes 1 through 3, though it looked like episode 4 finally was wiped on the 20th of October, 1969.
Well, in fact, this year really is rather a momentous one for Doctor Who. It's their 10th anniversary next month, so the programme is nearly as old as Petra.
Then there's a story of Blue Peter, and we know this very well. And this is a big one. And this is the first part of the rumors surrounding the missing episode 4 of the 10th Planet. Now, an edition of Blue Peter from November of 1973 showed the regeneration from episode 4 of the 10th Planet, which is how many believe that the episode got lost. And now, I remember everyone in fandom basically thought that Blue Peter got the only remaining film print of the episode. So basically, I remember back in the day, back in the mid to late 1980s with my friends, we were under the impression that Blue Peter got the only existing print of episode 4, and they simply never returned it after they had the broadcast to show the episode, and it got lost from that point, or somebody took it. And I think that's where a lot of the rumors over time of that, oh yeah, this is in private hands, it's no other way, because I think it starts with everyone thinking that Blue Peter had the whole episode. Now, my time working in television and film over the years for my career, it often is the case, and I think it was still the case back then, that when we wanted to show a clip of something, you would call up that clip. You wouldn't get a whole episode of something, and then you'd have to scroll through to get what you want. In some cases, you might get a non-broadcast version, so a producer could scan through, looking like just a viewing copy, so they can scan through and give a time code, and a clip would be provided that way. And that generally is kind of the way that works. Now, with this, back in the 1970s, it may not be the case, and Broadcast Who, as usual, has some ideas on what might have happened here. So here are the possibilities from Broadcast Who. Broadcast Who says it was struck directly from the original telerecording negative or prints held by Enterprises. However, it was not common for other BBC programs to approach Enterprises for clips. Another possibility is that it's a film transfer on 35mm that has been made on October 1966, intended to be used as the telescene insert reprise at the beginning of The Power of the Daleks Part 1, but which was not used. The film library managed to retain it for 7 years, despite them having junked all the other films that was shot for the episode. Now, it's also possible it's a reuse of the extract that featured on Junior Points of View in 1966, which aired the day before The Power of the Daleks, Episode 1, which means the film library had it on file for 7 years, which to me, even though Broadcast Who doesn't say it directly, to me it seems to be the same film print clip then that we just talked about that would have been telescene for the reprise of the first episode of The Power of the Daleks. Also, the clip was extracted from the 16mm film prints returned to the BBC from Singapore, where it had aired in April of 1972. If so, the Blue Peter editions may have chopped out the regeneration sequence from the print rather than making a copy. The episode had been edited by the New Zealand censors, and so was incomplete anyway. They binned the butchered prints afterwards. So even though I'm saying that it's more likely they didn't have a full episode, Broadcast Who is kind of saying, well, maybe that is a possibility as well. New Zealand sent edited film prints of this serial to Singapore on the 10th of January 1972. And the sale to Singapore was actually back catalog, as they had already been running John Pertwee episodes at that time. There's more to the story about that this episode, and actually the whole story, would have been returned with a whole grouping of prints from New Zealand. And I mean, there's just a lot of information, and I'm easily confused. So all the stories about episodes being returned from their sales contracts all around the world. There's a lot of it. And not even adding like the stuff from Ty in there as well. There's just a lot of stuff, a lot of moving pieces to this as well. And that's where something like Wiped is a very wonderful resource as well. Now, talking about like the first time I ever seen the Cybermen from the 10th Planet, I'm kind of curious, especially if you were growing up in the 80s, what it was like to see imagery from stories that had aired, 15, 20 years before you had a chance to see them. You would have read about them, you would have read the stories as Target novelizations. You would have seen pictures if you collected DWM or DWB. And that was really kind of like my special place. I didn't get access to DWM or DWB all that much. We would go to certain comic book shops that were easily, that my parents could easily go to, that might be in a mall that they were going to go to or anything. I never went to comic book shops when I was really young on a regular basis and kept up a collection of anything. And back then, we weren't getting, at least at the places that I was going to, we weren't getting DWM or DWB issue by issue by issue on a regular basis. In fact, it wasn't until probably 1993, 4, something around there, that I signed up for a subscription to DWM for maybe a year or two, and that was, first of all, expensive, but that was the first time I ever done that. But, getting into this in the 80s, and I've mentioned this before, seeing pictures of stories that were really big hitters back in the day, Yeti in the Underground, or all the like Evil the Daleks with the Emperor Dalek, all that stuff. Seeing the 10th Planet Cybermen, those were incredible. Those are great moments, and I cherish them. And we talk about this before. I think about, to me, if I look at the new series from Rose to what we just got, the Interstellar Space Contest was the last episode that I saw prior to shooting this. You're showing me shots from the episodes. Some look a little dated, going back 20 years ago, but not like if I'm looking at current stuff. For me, current stuff back in the day might have been like season 20, season 21, and looking at pictures from the 60s, to me, that looks like a completely different era. Completely. That to me doesn't seem like 20 years ago. That seems like 70 years ago. Especially before we could get really nicely restored quality copies of these episodes. Some of the episodes looked like that, they were, that Marconi was getting them in. I mean, it's just amazing, and I'm always curious, and I always ask these questions to all of you, especially new series fans. If you just started watching from Rose onwards, do you really see, looking back, and you look back at like publicity pictures from series 1, does it really look that much different than looking at the stuff that is being shot now? I mean, it's all in color. It's all 16:9. And maybe I'm way off. But, especially, and we talked about this in the 5 Doctors video, that opening with William Hartnell from the end of the Dalek Invasion of Earth. It looked like just some sort of incredibly, wonderfully old footage. And yeah, 20 years ago is a long time in terms of when the 5 Doctors aired. But it wasn't like now, if they put that in front of something, it's 60 years ago, 61 years ago. I mean, it's incredible. So I'm always curious. And, once again, if you're new to the series, you could easily find imagery, synopsises, behind the scenes, let alone the episodes on the internet, easily. You could just easily find this stuff. And I just find that I liked it the way that I came about the series. I liked the ability to learn little bits and pieces as I went along. I think that's what's important for me. Because it is fun to get all the information at once, but it's also fun to kind of put the pieces together and have a couple of aha moments too. And maybe people still do that. Maybe they still have their aha moments. I, for one, kind of enjoyed getting it very much piecemeal and never know when you're going to find another picture, another image from a Doctor Who story that you'd never seen before. Very much off topic, I was just seeing it today. The Doctor Who picture disc that came out in the 80s. I remember on PBS that was one of those premium gifts if you became a member. And they never had a close-up of the disc itself. You just could see it's a picture disc. On one side is the TARDIS, and the other is 3 images. And what I found always so interesting about that is, like I said, not knowing what pictures they are, couldn't quite see what they were, and that alone just fascinated me. Like, what are those pictures? You know, now I could see just like a corner of a picture. I could tell you what story it's from if we're talking the classic series. So, you know, it's really times have changed quite a bit. But one of the things that obviously really got me to love the Cybermen themselves are just beautiful. They're just a beautiful design. And even though they have changed a lot over the years, if you see a Cyberman, you know it's a Cyberman with those wonderful handles and whatnot. The first time I ever seen a Cyberman would have been in the 5 Doctors. And immediately I just thought they were incredible. And I love, and maybe I'm just a monster, I love the massacre scene in the 5 Doctors. But I also love how they sounded and how they looked. And it wasn't until afterwards that I had seen Earthshock. But I think it was somewhere between the two is when I started to see imagery of other Cybermen. And some of this, and normally I'm really good with memory, and some of this is a little hazy for me. But I'm trying to think about a couple areas where I got to see Cybermen. Probably like a DWM or DWB, and I immediately was enamored by their cloth faces and the dark holes for their eyes. And the fact that really didn't know much more about it than that. Didn't really know what they sounded like, but they looked so incredible to me. They looked like ghosts. And I just thought, gosh, this is really a bold design without even knowing what those words would mean. You know, it's just such a bold look, a bold design. And I just find them captivating to watch. What a fantastic look. And even with those massive apparatus on their chest, those chest units, they still looked, to me, incredibly fit and slim and very much all together. And I just thought this was amazing to see. And then even the Doctor Who technical manual had, and you know, I don't know when things come out or anything, when they're published, but it was around that time, because I think the Doctor Who technical manual may have been one of the first real books I ever got, and I loved it to pieces. Literally to pieces. I have a few other copies since then, but you know, it had stuff like the history of what the TARDIS console looked like, or at least the current one, which was not the current one from my point of view, but all the iterations of the Daleks, but also the Cybermen. And looking at that and being like, wow, this is incredible looking. You know, and even though they weren't, and I don't know if they were entirely accurate or not, but they were accurate enough for me to fall in love with. And I seem to recall, too, for the technical manual, that instead of having one for the Invasion and for Revenge of the Cybermen, they just went with the Revenge of the Cybermen one. those images in there, those illustrations were beautiful. And I remember, and I'm not sure if I mentioned this before, I remember in the back they had this, you could make your own police box model. And instead of, didn't photocopy it, I actually traced it because I wasn't going to cut it out. I actually traced all the pieces and then put it together, cut it out, and put it all together. And it wasn't easy, but it looked really cool. And I remember the day I got it done, and I just set it down on my bed because I just was going to move it somewhere else. And my friend Roger came over, and he decided that today was a good day to sit on my bed. And he sat right on it. What monster are you to not look before you sit down anywhere? Just unbelievable. I remember I wanted to throw him down some stairs, and I didn't. But yeah, just unbelievable. It's just like, well, that's ruined. That was like, 40 hours of work. It was a lot of work, and he just sat on it. Whatever. So I might as well just address this because this is important to me. You might think because I love the 10th Planet Cybermen, therefore I must love, and I hate the term for this,
a Mondasian Cyberman.
And I just am like, I love the fact that they wanted to bring them back. I hate the fact that they call those Cybermen
a Mondasian Cyberman.
And I do understand why, because it is a radical departure from what we had been seeing for Cybermen for the past, well, really, since 1966. And I appreciate them doing that. As much as they like to say that this is the original design, it's based on the original design. It's not quite right. But I do appreciate it. But what I thought was really interesting was the recent vinyl release for the 10th Planet, for the soundtrack for the audios, including the missing episode 4. And I found it very interesting that for the cover, they actually use a Mondasian Cyberman. And they overlay it with apparatus from the 10th Planet Cybermen and give it a new pose to, make it so that we get a new pose, like with something we've never seen before from those Cybermen. I applaud that. I think that is a great idea. You're not fooling me, though. That's clearly not a 10th Planet Cyberman. But I appreciate that. And, it is kind of nice to see a Cyberman from that era, or even one that is supposed to emulate that era, to be used in that way. It's not the first time we've seen anything like that. We have seen on DVD covers, I think they are Savan models that were used on some of the covers for the DVDs of the Daleks. And then there's also the Cybermen on the Moonbase DVD cover. I am fairly certain that is not a model, but a new costume that was used for some other photo shoot that was put onto the cover. I thought that looked spectacular. The 10th Planet one, it's not quite right, but I appreciate it all the same. And I like the fact that they want to do new things to try to give us something different. And I've said this before. People who are designing this stuff, especially stuff that has been designed for 50 years, depending on the story, you kind of, how do we do something that's a little bit more creative? And that is, I'm sure a very difficult thing. And because of that, I do like that album cover for the 10th Planet. Now, I'm not going to rehash yet again my massive disappointment to the fact that PBS was not allowed any of the Orphan episodes of Doctor Who to air, or the fact that so many of my stories that I really wanted to see had missing episodes to it. And if you want to see that, and kind of understand more of what I'm talking to. If you haven't done so, check out the War Machines video that I put together. I think that that's a really good an episode of this series to talk about, especially that PBS situation of how things worked. Now, I'm going to just say again for my Patreon, if you become a member there, and you can also get the video because we do have some of the videos for sale there. If you remember, Broadcast Who had said that they had heard stories back in the day that some PBS stations got copies of the War Machines that had the Regeneration tacked on at the end of it. That's not true at all. Not true at all. And I actually had TJ Lubinsky, as you would see in the video, talk about, give a statement on that, because he has worked with the PBS stations and Lionheart for decades. That never happened. And yet, Broadcast Who, because I reached out to John Pruddle about it, and he still won't remove that from Broadcast Who, which is a disappointment to me, because they are such a good site that they shouldn't be marred down by such nasty 1980s rumors. But one of the things that I did, and you can find it on my Patreon if you want to sign up or just get the video, is I actually edited the Regeneration scene onto the end of the War Machines, because I just wanted to see how it looked and then add the music on at the end. It works really well, actually, as a way, because Polly and Ben are not wearing the same outfits, but the Doctor is, and it can work. It really could possibly work. So if you have an opportunity, check that out. It seemed like from the time that I first saw any imagery from the 10th planet to the time I actually finally saw the 10th planet was a very long time. When you put the timeline together, it's 2 years. And that in itself that's insane to me. It seemed like it was so much longer. But I ended up going to Timefest in 1988 in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was Minnesota's first really big Doctor Who convention. It had John Pertwee, Janet Fielding, Fraser Hines, Eric Hoffman was there, and he plays down the line in my 10th Planet story. And just sensory overload for me, being a Doctor Who fan, and that not really knowing anything about anything, that this is, truly one of the greatest weekends of my life, being able to see these actors, being able to meet other people who love the series when everyone else around me that I knew really didn't like it at all. I mean, it was totally my sort of world that I live in, that nobody around me likes the same sort of thing I like. Now, of course, everyone likes Doctor Who, because whatever, they couldn't get past the effects or whatever back in the day, who knows. But I remember, and I've talked about this before as well, on one of the days going in and seeing a color clip from the Demons that I just thought was very interesting. I had no idea that the Demons were in color. But I also walked in and I saw a clip from Shada, which I don't know why I didn't stop and hang around longer in these rooms, because those were huge deals for me. This was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event. And Sunday morning I get there, and I have to say, I didn't stay at the hotel. I was 14 years old. I was not very old at all. And so my dad would drop me off and pick me up in St. Paul. We didn't really live near St. Paul, so downtown St. Paul, that is. But it was, such a wonderful time for my life. And it's Sunday morning, I get there early, and I'm just like hanging out, and I see the video room. There's probably more than likely, like listings of what's going to be played in the video room for that day, for some reason, I never even looked at that. And I ended up stepping in, and it was near the end of episode 3 of The 10th Planet. And I think where I stepped in was when Ben and Polly were trying to get the doctor to wake up. They put him into one of the bunker rooms. I mean, I just saw that immediately, like, that's 10th Planet. And, Ben going through the tunnels, whatever, and the vent shaft, I guess, which, lucky for him, were massive. And then just the only thing I saw of Cybermen were them coming and attacking the base and all being shot down by their own weapons. And that was still incredible. And, by this point I knew that there was no episode 4. So the episode ends with this, wonderful animation for the titles. I never seen that before. And we talked about how, by this point Doctor Who changed to the Euro style letraset, typeface. And I had never seen this before. And I thought, God, this is really cool looking. And is this on other episodes? I mean, I don't know anything. And so, like, what are they going to do for episode 4? I'd sit there and watch, and, are they just going to move on to something else? Because there is no episode 4, and I didn't know anything about reconstructions of any kind. And then episode 4 starts up. And I'm like, ooh, what is this? And it's the reprise of what we just saw at the end of episode 3 with the countdown. And then it goes to still frames from the other episodes, and these New Zealand young people are doing the script, and they're doing the audio for it. And it is unique. It is called, as I found out later in life, West Lodge doing a reconstruction of episode 4. And it looks a little something like this.
The Doctor suddenly had a horrible thought. He now knew what the Cybermen had in mind. They obviously intended to destroy the Earth by detonating the warhead on the Z-bomb. With a gasp, he lunged at the public address switch.
Ben, Bartley, don't help them. They need to use the bomb to blow up the Earth.
You have been foolish, Mondas will not explode. You will be taken to our spacecraft.
No, I must stay here. You need me.
The Cybermen need help from no one. All the humans in the radiation room will start removing the bomb from the missile, or you will never see your friends again.
Ben was extremely worried about Polly and the Doctor, but he realised that the polar base was unlikely to be able to assist him immediately. So he set off across the snowfields alone to the cyber ship. The Doctor and Polly were still strapped to their respective chairs, unable to do anything about the encroaching cold.
It's so cold, Doctor. What's that? Ben.
Hello, Duchess. Are you all right, eh?
You gave us a start, creeping up on us like that, didn't he, Doctor? Doctor?
We must get back to the TARDIS immediately.
Doctor, are you all right?
The TARDIS.
The three travellers trudged through the snow to the half-buried TARDIS. The Doctor seemingly in a world of his own, walking almost robot-like to his precious time machine.
Now you are going to wonder why they did that. And here's the thing. At this point in Doctor Who history, there were no telesnaps known to exist for the story. None whatsoever. And so the fact that even in, I don't know if this was 1984, 1985, 1986 that this was done. And so they're being able to grab still frames from the previous episodes. It's kind of an incredible feat. And I don't think we were really aware of the Graham Strong audios at that point. I think that came a little bit later, like in the early 90s. So we didn't have any of those. I mean, we had certain audios in existence at that time, but they weren't many of them, and they were stuff that we had, known something about. So this was a very earnest undertaking, and at the time, we all laughed at it. A lot of my friends and I laughed at it, and it, kind of a not great, production-wise. But here's the thing: they wanted to complete the story. They did what they could to make it a good experience for everybody, and that's the thing that I find very, very beautiful about it. Actually, not to get too carried away with words, but how wonderful that they actually did that, and they put themselves out there to create something. And it's incredible. It took me a long time to find this. I had it on a beta tape, and that was shipped off. Like, it went with my ex-wife for some reason. When she came and packed up her stuff, she took that box with all the beta tapes that with it. Nobody had it. And finally, a kind person sent me a note saying that they were able to track it down for me. And thank you very much. And I just, it's amazing. And this is why I do this series, because I don't want stuff like the West Lodge version of 10th Planet 4 to, number one, be forgotten and to disappear. Like, we can't get it, we can't see it, because this is all important to the fabric of the history of us watching these shows and watching these series. And obviously, as time goes on, we're going to talk about a couple other reconstructions in this video. And this was the first one, and it was, pioneering in its own way. I want to explain that Time Festival 1988, that moment, walking into the video room, seeing the 10th Planet, what I saw of it, what very little I saw of it, was the exact moment that I knew I wanted to be this. That I wanted to collect Doctor Who on VHS. At that point, BBC Video, if it was 1988, they haven't even begun releasing anything episodically yet. By that point, I did have Revenge of the Cybermen on NTSC VHS through Playhouse. But this is where I was like, I want to see these episodes. And at that point, there was absolutely there's no reason to believe that we were going to get copies of stuff like The 10th Planet, any Orphaned episodes, let alone at that point that on VHS released by the BBC, that there were going to be anything in its proper episodic format. There was nothing to give us that indication. So I knew I wanted to try to find it, and I really started searching for people to help me find it, and that's when I got involved with the Whoniversity, the Doctor Who fan club I had been a part of. I had been a member of since 1986. In 1988, so Time Festival being in July of 88, September of 1988, I decided that I wanted to come out and be a part of the Whoniversity. But the reason why I wanted to be part of the Whoniversity, there was a whole new regime that took over that club. The people who founded it had moved on. They've given it to other people. And they wanted to do a party and try to get fans and members to come out and be a part of stuff. And they offered up a copy of The Invasion to give away for, as one of the giveaways for people to come on out. And that was my language. When I saw that, I'm just like, I'm in. I want this. Once again, I'm 14. And I wanted to be, I figured maybe this is a way I could start getting some of these videos. And I come on out there, and there is no video that was given away. A guy named Roger was the president of the club, and often he became a very good friend of mine, but often what he would say never really translated into what really was going to happen. And so that didn't happen. But I liked these people, and I wanted to be able to be more a part of it. So I ended up joining part of what they called the staff of the university, so that I could help out and maybe get copies. And someone else in the university worked at the university. His name was Mike Fanslow, and he had a friend named John Lang. And John was also somebody who would collect some of these rare videos, much to my surprise that not everybody wanted to collect these videos. And I thought everyone would want to have this stuff like I did, and that wasn't the case. And Mike had arranged that John was going to give me his copies of these episodes so that I could dub. He didn't know me from anything, but he was going to give them to me. And so we jumped to November of 1988. A couple of things happened. We'll talk about someday. We had our party, Remembrance of the Daleks. It just finished airing just a month or so before our party. So that was huge at that point. But John brought me these tapes. There's like 4 or 5 of them, and they were the orphaned episodes. So what I wanted in July of 1988 with Time Festival, I wanted to see these, and now they're in my hands. The only one that wasn't there was The Invasion, for whatever reason. But as luck would have it, he made a copy of it to be given away at the party. Now, at that point, I wasn't staff yet. I was close friends with these people, but I wasn't actually part of the university staff yet. And so I won the copy of The Invasion that they had there. So I went from July hoping that someday I could see these. I really want to see these, to November having all of them. And I just couldn't believe my luck. I just could not believe this. But what's even more interesting about it, had a crash course in what these things look like, because they were what we call camera copies. And we've talked about this, we've shown it before, that they were a camera, an NTSC camera, that was pointed at a PAL monitor. And doing so, you get this flicker effect, which, if that's not bad enough, you also have the fact that these episodes have been dubbed down so many times that they're pretty atrocious looking. And as a 14-year-old, I didn't understand such things happened. I could also pinpoint my love for the VT clock in front of the episodes of Doctor Who. And why I say that is because in amongst these tapes, John himself, he had family that had a broadcast background. I think I mentioned his uncle worked at KTCA Channel 2. And he would put his own homemade, they weren't electronic clocks. They weren't VT clocks. They were like electronic clocks. And he'd put them before each episode, which maybe I stole that idea a little bit later from my own collection. And I love it. But the thing is that it was the episodes because they're from, the worst possible source, and I'm not complaining. I appreciate John lending me those tapes. They were very, I still to this day, I end up watching them once in a while. Very nostalgic, but I watched them quite a bit. But they would not start directly at the beginning of the episode with the title sequence. They might cut into like 3 seconds, and it has that wobbly sound to it and stuff. So I didn't understand that he made those clocks, and that he just put them before the quality tapes that he had, whatever quality those episodes were. Because I'm like, why would the BBC have these pretty decent looking clocks and then the rest of the episode looks absolutely horrible? I remember the other Roger in the group having to explain to me what was going on and what a camera copy was and what PAL and NTSC was. I had no idea what any of this stuff was. This was the birth of, like, you got to wonder if none of that stuff happened, which isn't a big part of the story when you really come to think of it, and it became a big part of the story. If I didn't have that, would I be interested in this stuff nearly as much? I really don't know, but my gosh, that was, what a time. And having that, suddenly, like I said, I had all the Orphan episodes, except at that point, I think what I didn't have, because they were either about to be found or they were found by this point, Faceless Ones, Episode 3, and Evil the Daleks, Episode 2. Other than that, because we didn't get to Ice Warriors at that point yet, that was all I was missing from having nothing to all of that. And the bug was set. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to collect these at that point. It became an obsession for me. And, that's the theme you get in these videos, going through them. They were very important to me. I've talked about in an Earthly Child video that I became friends with 3 gentlemen, Mike, Pete, and Craig. And once again, watched the Unearthly Child video to find a little bit about what Craig was trying to do with videos and money and whatnot. But I became friendly with all of them to the point that just a year on from Timefest. So Timefest is in July of 88, July of 1989. The same people who put on Timefest put on another 3-day Doctor Who convention called PlayersCon, same hotel and everything. And I knew these folks enough that I was down there Thursday night helping Mike, Pete, and Craig put together the video room. And that was really fun. I think anyone, especially when I was 15 at that point, everybody wants to feel accepted. And, you're amongst peers. Well, you're not amongst peers because they're not my peers. They're people who I looked up to because they were able to get, these videos, and they had a great sense of where to get them from. And, it was really cool. And I wanted to be a part of that scene. So for the fact that they, let me be a part of that and just take care and watch and help wherever I can, I really appreciated it. And I have to tell you a story, not connected with the 10th Planet really, or even tangentially to videotape trading, so we're all setting up on Thursday night, and Craig is like, I'm hungry, does anyone want to get some food? Mike and Pete, they're fine. They're like, no, we're good. And I'm like, yeah, I'll come along, sure. And Craig came from a family that was pretty well-to-do. I don't know if they were necessarily rich, but they were very well-to-do. And I remember going over to his place, which was really far out. I don't know where it was, actually. But we went out there a couple times to get videos from him. And went out there. And we get to his truck that he had. I mean, because when we go out to his house, first of all, they had a satellite dish. And this is in 1989. And I don't mean like a satellite dish like DirecTV. I mean one of those big broadcast satellite dishes that people would have that would pick up feeds to TV shows, feeds to news events. So it wasn't like all these channels. It was like news feeds, syndication feeds, really cool stuff. You know, if you wanted to pick up, you know, syndicated, you know, episodes of like even possibly Star Trek The Next Generation at that time or whatever else, that would be a way to get them. And that was the norm all the way through the 90s. And so they had something like that and a nice size house. I mean, they seemed pretty well to do. His equipment that he had in his room for video stuff, and he wasn't that much older than I was. I mean, he probably was like at the most 20, and I was 15. You know, all this high-end gear, and in his room he had this big projection screen and projector that we were watching stuff off of and stuff. It was really incredible. So yeah, I want to go have some lunch with him or dinner with him, and I wanted to kind of you know, just maybe get to know him a little bit better. And we get to the parking ramp, we get to his truck. His truck is a convertible truck, meaning that there's no top on it at all. It's summer, so it's like a you know, it just says I'm rich. You know, that's what that says. And we get into it, and we're driving, and we're going to this is in St. Paul, so we go up to Snelling Avenue over to University, and you're all going to be like, I don't know where that is. It's a place called Midway, and it's, at that time, it wasn't a great place. It was a very it could be very sketchy. And that was actually the area where the proms were, which is where the Peter Davison convention was. And only recently did I really think to myself, once my dad saw that big line around the building, which was why I didn't get to experience Peter Davison at the prom, it might be that you're just going to have to stand outside for a great period of time, and you're in this kind of sketchy neighborhood. Probably not a great idea. So that might have actually been, that's kind of an eye-opener for me. I never really thought of it that way before. So we go to a Wendy's, and to get to the drive-thru, he had to go around and into a parking area that had a parking lot that had a building, a large hill, and another building. So it you're kind of trapped in a little bit when you go around and do this. And we're driving, and there is these two kids on the hill, and they yell something to us. And Craig, who is this preppy rich kid, tough guy, he pulls his convertible truck around, and because it's, you know, like a convertible truck, it's like kind of a lower. It's not like a high tires or anything. It's a little bit lower, and these kids come up to his side of the truck, and he's like, is there something wrong? You know, kind of attitude. And one of the kids like, yeah, you. And then they start pummeling him. They start punching the hell out of him. He's like a punching bag. He's just two of them. They are just ganging up and punching him. And 15-year-old Greg is sitting there watching it in the passenger seat. First of all, I can't even fight a fly. How am I going to help him here? I don't know what to do. Let's put it this way. I don't know what to do where it requires me not to get hurt. And so I'm sitting there watching, and, you know, and he's putting his foot on the accelerator, but he put the car into park. So all it's doing is spinning the wheels as they're just punching him relentlessly. And finally puts it into a drive, and we squeal off. And he just looks at me, he's like, why didn't you help me? I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I don't fight. You know, I just want some Doctor Who episodes. And so we ended up still going to Wendy's. He was undeterred. He wanted dinner. I mean, it was like weird because they were pummeling him, but they didn't really much punch him too terribly hard because he wasn't like black or blue or anything, or bleeding. But yeah, I mean, it felt like it took like 2 minutes, but it probably took like 10 seconds. But I always find that, I'm sorry, funny, because no one should be beaten up. But if you're going to be beaten up, you probably are going to be because you're driving a truck that's a convertible. And that you could just I mean, I kind of felt it when I even saw it. I'm like, oh, this thing isn't going to fit in around here. So I thought that was really funny. So at that very same convention, once again, if you watch an Earthly Child video, you're going to see that around that time, I had worked out via Craig to get me to be introduced to Mike. Mike had all the episodic versions of stuff. And we had a great first conversation, and he said that I could send him some tapes to duplicate. And so I happily did so. And amongst them, I think really all I got was, it might have been the pilot converted, because I wanted to move away from the whole camera copy thing. Doesn't mean that these were pristine copies, but they weren't camera copies, and that does make a big difference, so you don't have all this flashing and whatnot. So I think I gave him the T60 for the pilot. I also asked for the Ian Levine Shada, because I've always wanted to see it since I saw it at Time Fest. And then I asked for the 10th Planet. Of course, my whole system of tape trading throughout the years was always I would always get 10th Planet from whoever I was trained from, just to see if they had a better copy. And so he gave me those because the University, there's the main video room downstairs in the hotel, and then the University had a poolside cabana that also we decided we're doing a video room, because by that point I was staff in the University, and my job was programming the video parts of the parties and stuff. And so I made 3-day schedule of wonderful stuff to show, and amongst them was that Mike brought me these tapes copied. So I had Shada, and I had the 10th Planet, and I had the pilot. And I decided that I'm going to show these at the Cabana Room. And Shada itself, we showed Shada, and somehow in that tiny hotel room, 60 people crammed in to watch Shada. Now, if a lot of you may only know Shada from the season 17 collection or the Blu-ray with the animation. Someday we'll do a version based on the BBC video release. But Ian Levine's Shada is very much in tune with what Ian Levine is. Not one thing is thrown out. So what I mean by that is he's not going to put a video together that will surmise the missing bits. You're getting the script on screen for all the missing bits. So for these people to sit through just countless amount of time of no real good quality, no scenes, no video scenes, just script on screen, and many generations down that it had this hiss whenever it would be non-video stuff. And they sat through it, the entire thing, without, they just were enamored by it. It was really something. I couldn't do that, honestly. That's a lot to ask. But so he gave me these new tapes, and I had at that time gave him, in classic Greg format, that, making everyone's life a lot more difficult. I had given Mike 10 Scotch tapes. We talked about this before. That was a 10-pack that was covering the first season of Doctor Who that he could record for me. And it's a great story. Watch an Earthly Child video for that. But so I lumbered that upon him, and I got these other tapes amongst some 10th Planet, and there was like a couch in the room, and then people would sit on the floor and other things. And over in the side couch, there was like a little lamp stand that had a drawer in it, and I kept the videos in the drawer. And I went to pull out the 10th Planet that was in the drawer, and someone stole it. Someone took the 10th Planet. The video I just got, I haven't even had a chance to look at it yet. And that would have had the West Lodge reconstruction on it as well. That's all there was anyway. But so that was gone. I think I looked at it the day before I was going to run it. And I was just like, I can't believe this. I can't believe that someone would take it. And I can't believe that this happened. And also, I can't believe how dumb I was to just leave them in an area that everyone could get them. So I asked Pete and Mike and Craig, I said, this is what happened. We're going to say it up in our room, but do you think you could say it in your room that it looks like that someone mistakenly had taken one of our videotapes that had the 10th planet on it? Could you please return it? No questions asked. And between the two rooms, I look in the drawer one day, the next day or whatever, and it's back, which I'm very grateful for. And it just looks like that somebody decided that they wanted a copy of the 10th planet. And, since I got it back, no questions asked, I'm okay with that. Now, over the years, like I said, I had looked at, every time I would get someone new to trade with, I'd ask them for a copy of the 10th planet. I just always wanted to have a really nice quality copy. And of all people that I got, for the longest time, my best copy of the 10th planet was from Eric Hoffman. And Eric Hoffman really, and I mean this in a very respectful way, he was really a product of his time. Eric was a researcher into a lot of sci-fi, literary, television, film. He did a lot of stuff. He could be a challenge, to be perfectly honest, at conventions and in person. Sometimes fans can't help themselves, but he became very good, close friends with John Pertwee and some other people on the convention circuit. He was always, pretty nice to me. And what he was really known for at the time was he had an off-air copy of the color version of the Demons that was broadcast on KETC. And I don't think he recorded himself. He knew somebody who had it, and I think he bought the tape or whatever else. Sean had always surmised, because Eric had so much stuff, which unfortunately was his undoing, that Sean, who put on the Gallifrey conventions, always surmised that he wouldn't be surprised if he also had a color copy of The Mind of Evil somewhere in his collection, because he had there's a lot of stuff that he had and didn't know where it was, which I always thought was kind of fun, whether it's ever even remotely true or not. And I don't think it is. It's still a fun story. But Eric really wanted to get into a lot of Doctor Who conventions. I think he liked being flown out, and he'd love to talk and pontificate about Doctor Who, even if he got the details wrong, which I'm sorry he did on a number of occasions. I was in a panel once where he actually told people that An Earthly Child was broadcast live, wasn't from tape. So, there's that. But he asked me, he's like, I'd like to come out to your convention. We were doing PseudoCon 2 at that point. We had talked to him at HoosierCon, which was the Unit reunion. Everybody from Unit was there except for Nicholas Courtney. That was in Indiana. It was a lot of fun. We went there by train and saw someone really test the limits of John Pertwee's kindness. That's a story for another day. But he really wanted to go, and the reason what he was telling me was basically, I want to come out to your convention. I bring a lot to the convention, but I can also bring my color copy of the Demons. And I was just like, wow. But I asked him, can I get some stuff from you? Because I know you have quite a collection. And he's just like, yeah, just not Demons. I'm like, that's fine. I'm like, can I get the 10th planet from you? He goes, yeah, you can. And he's like, let me tell you about the 10th planet. He said, I got my copy from Jerry Davis. Now, at that point, Jerry Davis had moved from the UK over to LA and befriended Eric Hoffman. So Eric's copy is from Jerry's pal Tape, and it also included the episode that exists of Celestial Toymaker, episode 4, The Final Test. So he kindly sent that to me, and it was incredible. The quality was absolutely wonderful for its time, and I remember showing it to my friend Roger, which I bring up quite a bit, and Roger's is like, "It's broadcast quality." It's not. VHS is never broadcast quality, and even if it was like really high quality, this wasn't as high quality, but it was the best that we had at that point. And that was like one of those episodes that was converted from one of the Iowa multi-system VCRs that we had talked about before, and it was really wonderful. It was really fun to have, but the real issue that I had with it was that it had The Final Test and 10th Planet on the same tape, which, like how people don't like their food to touch, I don't like my stories to touch. And that was surprisingly hard for me to get around. It's real amazing how we develop these kind of OCD sort of moments. And but they both looked really good for the time period that they were that this was around, before anything official ever came out for any of them. Unfortunately, Eric had passed away a couple of years ago in unfortunately rather tragic circumstances. I know that he was very much a big part of the Gallifrey 1 conventions, and I know Sean and other people miss him quite a bit. I know that there's falling outs and stuff over time, but it's a shame that Eric is gone now. But I don't know how to end that, quite frankly. I had gotten a lot of copies over time of the 10th Planet, but the one that really stands out to me for so many reasons is in 1997, probably 1998 maybe. My good friend Robert, not living in Minnesota at that time, and we were both collecting stuff in Super VHS. I think he had a PAL system. I did not at that point, but Robert would do these things that he would just send you videotapes of stuff, which is kind of cool. And I remember getting I needed to get a molar extracted, and so I wasn't feeling super great. Wasn't feeling so hot. And got back from the dentist. I was still living at my parents', and I talked to Robert on the phone daily, if not every couple of days. Very close. We really had this great dynamic sort of relationship of talking with each other, and I always treasure that. And I get home from the dentist, and there's this package waiting for me from Robert. And I open up the package, and it just says 10th Planet on it, and I think there was like some sticky note like, play this. And it was Super VHS, and put it in and play it, and the quality was phenomenal, to the point that when the VHS got released of this story, it was nominally better than the Super VHS copy that Robert gave me. That's how good that copy was. And that was the first time I had ever noticed the sellotape around the helmet of the Cybermen to keep the helmet and the jugs connected to the helmet itself. I had all the other copies that I ever had were so poor that you never really saw that before. I still never saw the eyes and the holes. In fact, it wasn't until I got a digital, really high quality digital copy after the VHS release and long before the DVD release, we got a hold of, someone got a hold of a copy from the archives that was just perfect and was sent my way. But it wasn't, that's where I saw the eyes in there. But this was clear enough to see the cellophane. And just beautiful, just amazing. It's not even so much getting a high quality copy like that. It was more getting someone sending something like that turned a crappy day into an amazing day instantly. And that was super, super exciting and very memorable for me. And that's why I always think that these, this time doing the videos and stuff, that's why it's so important to me. That's why I love it so much. Have you ever wanted to be a missing episode hunter? Have you ever wanted to return an episode of Doctor Who that was missing to the BBC? I did. This is going to be the first time that we take a story and we cut it into two pieces. Because my story with 10th Planet only begins now. And whether it puts me in a good light or not, that's what you all can decide on your own. But these videos are meant to be transparent. These videos are meant to be an accurate depiction of the history of these stories and also my nostalgia and my history around them. The next episode, we're going to be focusing on trying to find episode 4 of the 10th Planet. I've had it come into my stratosphere 3 times that we looked like that we might be getting this story back. And it's going to be a story of greed, a story of fame hunting. It's a lot of lessons that were learned that I want to share. And perhaps the biggest part of it all is the hoax that took place in 1992 with the Shabadan copy of the 10th Planet episode 4 apparently being available. And the BBC fell for it by a gentleman named Roger Barrett. Who is Roger Barrett? What was his motivation? Maybe we could put a little bit more light on that in the next episode. So once again, as always, if you have any comments, please leave them. You can email me, or you can put them in the comments for YouTube. Also, once again, Patreon. Anyone who has not become a Patreon member, please know that I love your support. And anyone who has become a Patreon member, thank you very much. I understand that people watch these at different levels and support in their own way. And I appreciate anyone's support. And here are the folks that support me through Patreon now. We just went through one half of the 10th Planet. We're doing a second one. Stay tuned for it. Episode 2 should be coming along fairly soon.